Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Guys Who Stare at Stats. Cade Kennedy with you. It is another Sunday afternoon, so it's AP poll reaction time, the Week 6 AP poll. As always, before we get into it, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell to always be notified when new videos come out, and to leave a comment down below. Tell me what you think about the AP poll this week. Is there anything they got right, got wrong, anything you agree with, disagree with on my part, kind of takeaways here. And of course, we have to talk about the number one thing to look at here. You can clearly see it. Alabama's number one. And they rightfully deserve to be number one with the way they played, just coming out, dominating Georgia in the first half. It's 28-0 at one point, 30-7 at halftime. Alabama just looked completely in control of the game. And then they got way too conservative in the second half. Georgia makes a massive comeback. But even with all that happening, even with Georgia taking the lead 34-33, Alabama immediately responds, forces a turnover at the end of the game, and slams the door right back. Jalen Milroe had a spectacular night, to say the absolute least. Alabama deserving to be number one with the way you play. I think whoever won that game was going to be number one regardless. But I think the way Alabama came out, that was a statement for Alabama to say, hey, listen, we know who we are. We know what we can be this year, and we're going to prove it right now. Alabama, number one. Texas falling to 2. I think this is more of just because of that Alabama-Georgia game than anything else. Texas, 35-13 over Mississippi State in a game where Texas really struggled a bit. Mississippi State wanted to play that clock control type of offense, and they were able to do it, holding onto the ball for 35 minutes compared to Texas's 25. But Texas did what good teams do. They eventually found a way to slowly pull away, staying in number 2 completely fine for them. Ohio State still at number 3. No problems here. Michigan State, slow start for the Buckeyes, but some longer drives for Ohio State early on in the game, trying to really just control this one from the jump, and they get a 38-7 win. No problems for the Buckeyes. Tennessee moving up to number 4, Georgia falling to 5, Oregon sliding up to 6 with their win over UCLA. That Oregon looked dominant out of the gate and then slowly let UCLA back in it. A pick 6 right before halftime for the Bruins. Get a field goal in the third quarter. Starts to look like, okay, we might have our first real Big Ten after dark affair, but Oregon, to their credit, played lights out in the fourth quarter defensively, got the one touchdown you needed to really put this thing away. And then Penn State at 7. Big win for Penn State. You don't usually think of Illinois as a big win, but Penn State, their primetime game they got to have, they wanted the whiteout-like atmosphere for that one, and they absolutely got it. Illinois scored the first drive of the game. Never again. Penn State's defense played phenomenal after that. I mean, just holding Illinois just to absolutely nothing, especially in the second half. Great win for Penn State. Defense really shining in that one. Miami at 8. And oh boy, Miami. We'll talk about this more when I have Tyler with me tomorrow for the recap video. But I mean, Miami gets saved by, if you want to say a bad call from the refs, I mean, it's kind of weird because I think they made the right call, but based on what they had, I don't think you can overturn that. Either way, for Miami, this should not have been a close game. You should not have been in a back and forth with Virginia Tech, especially at home. Cam Ward made some amazing plays. He also made some very crazy mistakes that you wouldn't expect from a guy in Heisman conversation, or at least trying to get in that Heisman conversation. Missouri didn't do anything this week. They move up by default. Michigan holding on for dear life. I mean, kind of a similar story we talked about with Oregon. Looked great in the first half. What in the world happened in that fourth quarter? You make one or two mistakes, an interception, and then that leads to Minnesota scoring, and then a 3-and-out, a big punt return for Minnesota, and all of a sudden you get a ball game on your hands. Michigan having to hold on for dear life in that one. USC at 11, bad first half for the Trojans, but the defense getting to be the story in the second half for USC, doing what you need to do, shutting the door on Wisconsin. That's kind of become the familiar phrase of the day. Shutting the door, just absolutely slamming it when you have to make sure you don't get upset. USC's offense comes to play. Miller Moss a lot better in the second half, and USC gets to win what looks like comfortably 38-21, but it was a lot more of a fight for most of that game. And then Ole Miss falling to 12. And I'm surprised they didn't fall a little bit more. I wouldn't have been shocked to see them at 13 or 14. Ole Miss got completely manhandled by Kentucky. They absolutely did. We talked about it a little bit on the preview show Tyler and I did. If Kentucky got that game plan going again of control the clock, be physical on offense and defense, have a strong run game both with your running backs and with your quarterback, Ole Miss had the potential to really be in trouble if that offense couldn't get going. That's exactly what happened. Kentucky played this about as perfectly as you could at certain times. You know, obviously you kind of expect Kentucky to not be fully aggressive in this game. You expect them to make their key decisions when they had to. Kentucky played this super well. And what do they get? They get a big upset win to show for it. Ole Miss, it's back to the drawing board. And of course, a lot of people are going to say Ole Miss is still soft. They're still not a good team. They haven't played anybody yet. This was their first real big game, the first SEC game. So Ole Miss is going to have to go back to the drawing board here. They've got to play a bit tougher. And Kentucky's got a good defense. Don't take anything away from Kentucky here. They are a solid football team. But Ole Miss just not what anyone expected to see from them based on all the hype we'd been hearing building up to this game. LSU at 13. Congratulations to LSU. They finally played a complete game. They did what you're supposed to do when you play South Alabama. They beat them 42-10. Notre Dame, big win for the Irish. Defense stepped up, forced a couple of turnovers. Notre Dame had some fumbles on their own. But Riley Leonard playing one of his more efficient, if not his most efficient game of the season, I really thought. Notre Dame had control of this one early, and they just ran with it the entire way. Notre Dame had some moments where you thought, okay, Louisville's going to make this a game again. Here we go. But every single time, Notre Dame found a way to step back up and get that big win at home they desperately needed. Clemson at 15, Iowa State at 16. Nothing really to talk about here. Defense playing a big part for both teams there. BYU at 17. BYU just... oh man, you want to talk about another one of those games where it's just, okay, we're on the road, we're up 20 early, we're doing great, and then just completely falling apart near the end, only to come back and shut Baylor out when they absolutely had to get a stop. BYU did. And then you look at BYU's rival. Utah did not have a fun day at all. Isaac Wilson once again getting the start in place of Cam Rising. And Utah's offense just had nowhere to go. Some of that was just mistakes by Utah. A lot of that was Arizona's defense rising to the occasion, had the bye week. Noah Fafita looked great again. He made some big-time throws. His confidence looks to be back. He was able to find receivers. He was able to scramble around in the pocket when Utah started to cave in on him. Just what you wanted to see from Arizona, really. And I mean, Arizona played about as well as you can. You look at that and think, only 23 points. Don't they have a really good offense? That's about as good as you're going to get against a defense like Utah's. So Arizona came into a very hostile environment. The Muss is not a fun place to try to deal with. And Arizona, big win for them. Utah falling 8 spots. They're deservingly so. Utah just no signs of life on offense at times. Credit to Arizona for taking advantage of that. Oklahoma moving up to 19. Crazy win for Oklahoma. Just looked absolutely dead until the final 10 minutes of the game. Oklahoma, just huge for Michael Hawkins, true freshman on the road, first ever start. I mean, just you could not ask more from the kid in terms of just being gutsy, gritty, whatever adjective you want to use. Just playing great when he absolutely had to. Defense stepping up. Kip Lewis, a fantastic pick six to really turn the tide of the game. And Oklahoma, I think, honestly, playing the best 10 minutes of football they had for the entire year right there at the end. Kansas State moving up to 20. Dominant win over Oklahoma State. K-State turning the tide after that first quarter, shutting down really anything Oklahoma State had going for him until giving up a garbage touchdown late. DJ Giddens, can't say enough about him. Showed that he is that big running back in the Big 12 this year, maybe taking over that position from Ollie Gordon. That might be a conversation we have on Monday. Boise State running wild over Wazoo. If you've not followed Boise State this year, I think everyone's heard about them. Everyone's gotten an opportunity to see them now. Ashton Genty is that guy. He's outrunning where Barry Sanders was at this point. If you think about Barry Sanders' amazing campaign he had back in '88, Genty's ahead of him in terms of rushing yards right now. So Boise, you're going to have to keep an eye on them. Louisville falling all the way down to 22 for their loss at Notre Dame. And welcome in Indiana at 23. Indiana 5-0. And Kurt Cignetti, I mean, you can't talk about how well of a job he's done enough. Said, I want to come in and I want to win, and that's exactly what he's done so far. Indiana, continue to watch them with great interest, folks. Their schedule really looks favorable for them, maybe to be a 9-0 team by the time they get to Michigan. I'm not going to call that yet. I'm not going to say that's a definite, but Indiana have to keep an eye on the Hoosiers. Illinois falling to 24. That's kind of expected. Your defense held their own offense, really had nothing doing after that first drive. And welcome in UNLV. What in the world has happened with UNLV these past few weeks? I mean, you have the great wins, obviously. You have the whole drama this week with Sluka being out at quarterback, not going to play the rest of the season. People trying to figure out what's happening with UNLV. What's happening is they're still winning. They rally together. They dominate Fresno State 59-14. Congrats to UNLV. It's great to see them in the AP poll. This does not happen often or ever, really, for UNLV. We think of them, if they're in the AP poll, it usually would have been for basketball. But great to see that the Rebels have made it. Looking at other teams receiving votes, Arizona, obviously, for their big win. Pittsburgh, Nebraska, Boston College, and Iowa kind of rounding out that next 5 in, if you want to call it, your 26 through 30. There they are. But, folks, that will do it for this video. As always, like I said earlier, feel free to like it, subscribe to the channel, all those great things there. Leave a comment down below, hit the notification bell, and until next time, folks, have a good one, everybody. Which should be a fun week ahead. It's going to be a great time. Keep on watching.